So welcome everyone to this ZEF colloquium. Today our speaker is Juliette Acheng Owur. I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly. She is a researcher at the European Forest Institute here in Bonn. Juliette has a master's degree in forest science and forest ecology from the University of Göttingen and a bachelor's degree in agroforestry and rural development. She has previously worked for several international organizations, such as, for example, the World Agroforestry Center, ICRAF. And her current research focus is on forest sector employment, forest education, and green jobs in the forest sector. So Juliette, I give you the floor now. If you want to share your screen, I think I already gave you permission, right?
Okay, so just a moment. So can you see my screen now?
Mm-hmm.
Screen?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Yeah, so thank you so much to the organizers of this event.
Maybe?
Okay, just a moment. There's so many icons here. Just wait. Okay. Is it okay now? Is it full screen?
No, it's not.
No.
If you go to the, if you click there on the right, a little bit, the icon.
Yeah, now it's working well, yeah?
It's working.
Okay, yeah. So, yeah, so thank you so much for inviting me to this event to share the results of the study that we conducted in 2019. So I'm from the European Forest Institute, like it has already been said, and I would like today to share with you some insights on trends in forest-related employment and tertiary education, and these insights are from key forestry countries. So the presentation is divided into 4 parts. I will give a brief background about our project, and then I will also give some information about the study. So how did we select the countries and the experts? And then how did we conceptualize forest-related employment? And then I will also share some summary of the results that we obtained, and then we will end with the conclusion. So this project that I'm working in and that this study is part of is called the Global Student Networking and Green Jobs in the Forest Sector. So it's a joint capacity development project which started in 2018 and it's ending in 2021. And it's a collaborative project by the European Forest Institute and the International Forestry Students Association and the International Union of Forest Research Organizations. The project is funded by the German Federal Ministry of Food and Agriculture. So among the many things that we do in this project is research on employment in the forest sector. So the goal of the research is to provide a general outlook of employment in the global forest sector and to also identify the employment indicators as well as competency needs. So our research approach is made of 4 steps. So the first task that we carried out is a literature review on the future of employment, while at the same time also exploring the field of green jobs in the forest sector. So this was conducted in 2019 from January up to September. And then the second step was the Bonn Experts Workshop on forest sector employment, green jobs and forest education. So this event took place on 18th and 19th of November. And the third task that we've conducted here in this project is the Global Student Survey. So, okay, I don't know what's happening. Okay, so I think I will just continue. year, we did a survey from May to December last year on forestry students and graduates. So we were asking them about their perceptions on forest sector employment. We were also asking for their perceptions on skills and competency needed in forest education. So do they find them relevant, or are they not relevant? You know, are they sufficient, or are they not sufficient? So we just wound up the survey in December, and we are yet to start with the data analysis. And then the other thing that we've done, that we are yet to do, is actually the employers survey. So we want to find out from employers in the forest sector what they think about employers. Students who are coming out of universities and tertiary,
I think you're breaking up.
Whether they are prepared for the job market and this kind of thing. So this is yet to be done. We will most certainly do it towards the second half of the year. And so this Born Experts Workshop, so this is where our focus will be, because this is where the study originated. So the workshop was titled Experts Workshop on Forest Sector Employment, Green Jobs and Forest Education. It took place on 18th and 19th of November. I've already said that, and it was in Bonn. And the aim of the workshop was to identify trends in forest-related employment in selected countries around the globe. And we also wanted to investigate the adjacent and emerging fields, such as green jobs. And then the other aim of the workshop was to examine forest-related tertiary education in these same countries. And we wanted to find out how, education is adapting to the existing trends in employment. So the first step towards the planning of the workshop was the selection of countries. So we wanted countries that have high relevance of forest and forest-related sectors into the national economy. And we were also looking, so in terms of this, we were looking at a country's relative total forest cover. We were also looking at the significant contribution to the GDP. And we were also looking at the number of full-time equivalent jobs that the sector provides. So this was based on the FAO Global Forest Resources Assessment Report. And then we were also looking for countries with available and reliable employment data. So this was determined by the presence of a well-organized data collection system that was clearly describing the methodologies used. And we were also looking for data from reputable bodies. And the last criteria that we used for selection of countries is the global coverage. So we wanted to represent all the continents. So eventually, after coming up with all those criteria and indicators, we ended up with Brazil, China, Finland, Germany, Indonesia, South Africa, and the US. So if you see, there's some continents that are represented by 2 countries, and then there are others with 1 country. But at the end of the day, we wanted to ensure that at least each continent is represented. And then the other step that was involved in the preparation was the expert selection. So this began towards the end of March 2019, and we used a snowball sampling. So we contacted 1 expert, and then the expert would recommend other experts, like that. And then we also did screening of relevant institutions. So we went to, for example, 1 country, we look at the forest institution and then try to identify experts from there. And then we wanted to have a diverse panel of experts, so drawn from different organizations. So we had experts from research organizations, we had experts from academia, we had experts from the private sector, and we also had experts from international organizations. And then we also wanted the experts to be evenly distributed among the 3 topics that we were tackling. So we wanted experts with sufficient knowledge in forest sector employment. We were also looking for experts with sufficient knowledge on green jobs in the forest sector, as well as experts with knowledge on forest education. And then the other task that we conducted was conceptualizing forest-related employment. So this was done in 2 ways. And the first one was through use of the International Standard Industrial Classification of all economic activities. So this classification was developed by the UN Statistics Division. And in our case, we went for Division 2, forestry and logging, which has 4 classes. So the first class is silviculture and other forestry activities. So here you're talking about forest nurseries, you know, you're talking about planting, replanting, and afforestation activities. And then the second class was logging. So here we are talking about roundwood production, we are talking about firewood, we are talking about burning charcoal in natural forests using traditional methods. And then the third class was gathering of non-wood forest products. So this refers to, you know, collection of wild growing materials, for example, nuts, berries, you know, and this kind of things. And then the other class that is found under this division is the support services to forestry. So this is, for example, like doing monitoring of forests, for example, you know, and then we also have consultancy services, for example, and also transport of logs within the forest. So all these are considered as support services to forestry. And then, so this only focuses on forestry and logging, but we wanted to capture trends within the forest sector as a whole, so beyond this forestry and logging class. So for this, we used the outline on green jobs that was proposed by the UNECE FAO team of specialists on green jobs in the forest sector. So this outline has categories of forest jobs, you know, that are classified according to 7 thematic areas. So we have social and urban development, we have forest management, inventory and planning, and health and recreation, and others and others. So this is what we use now to capture trends beyond forestry and logging. But this is somehow a European, you know, concept. So it had its own limitations, but at the end of the day, it still is broad enough to capture these trends that we were looking for. And we also tailor-made it to suit each individual country. And then, yeah, we also wanted to capture trends in wood, paper, and furniture manufacturing. So yeah, this was also now captured under trends beyond forestry and logging. And then, yeah, so for this study, we defined green jobs as a subset of employment in the environmental sector that means the requirement of decent work. So in terms of wages, safe working conditions, workers' rights, and social protection, among others. And then in the forest sector, so activities can be classified as green jobs if they use environmentally sustainable technology and practices as well. And then in addition to that, of course, the element of decency. And this definition was obtained from the guidelines for the promotion of green jobs in forestry adopted by the UNECE in October 2019. And then we also had to define forest-related tertiary education. So for us, we went for a definition by the IFSA statutes 2007, as well as the Recola et al. 2016. So here we were very broad. So we defined it as education related to forests, which include forestry, forest sciences, agroforestry, environmental sciences, land use, environmental management, or any combination of these, but offered at the university level. So I think before I go to the results, I think it's also important to say that when we were looking for the trends in forest-related employment, we were focusing on both professionals as well as workers. So those with the tertiary level of education and those ones who also do manual work or part-time work and this kind of activities. But when it came to trends in forest-related education, so there we only focused on the tertiary level. And we decided to focus on tertiary level because one of the project partners is the International Forestry Students Association. And this is a group of students who've come together to form an organization. And the organization is made up of students who are at the university level. And that's why we had to focus at least on the university level. But for the employment, we decided to go for the other, as well as people with, technical training, because we realized that there are more trends there if we try to be broad enough. So now we go to the summary of the results, and we will start with Brazil. So yeah, this is a big table, but we'll go step by step. So in Brazil, there's an overall decline in employment in forestry and logging. So this is because mostly of mechanization. So, the machines took over the harvesting of logs in the forest. So yeah, many people lost their jobs. And then there's also in the broader forest sector, employment. So the furniture, pulp, and paper production industries accounted for 60% of the workforce. So this is, a big employer in the country. And then when it comes to green jobs, so there are no explicit initiatives as such, but there's a government program that aims at the restoration of degraded areas. And this program rather is expected to create around 190,000 jobs in a year when it's implemented. So it's not yet started, but when it's implemented, it's expected to create a lot of jobs for the people. And then so the green economy in Brazil is also expected to create employment prospects in, for example, health and recreation, leisure and sports, urban forestry, agroforestry, and these other fields of employment. And then additional trends in forest-related employment. So in Brazil, apparently the big companies have been merging. So, and as a result of the merger, so their capacity has been strengthened. And so Brazil is now like, a key global player in the global market when it comes to forest products. And then another trend that has been observed in Brazil is that there is training and certification programs for forest workers, as well as forest engineering graduates. So after some time, the workers are retrained, so that they can learn what is the new trends in the field of employment, and also to enhance security. And then when it comes to forest-related education, we see that in Brazil, there's more than four times increase in forest engineering graduates from 260 in 1995 to 1,700 in 2018. And now the next country is China. So in China, there was a declining number of workers from 1.3 million, that was in 2008, to 1.1 million in 2017. And this decline has been attributed to the ban on commercial logging in natural forests that was introduced by the government between 2015 and 2019. But worth noting is that this declining numbers was only in logging. But when you come to silviculture and forest management, there was an increase in the number of jobs. So more people were being employed in this field. And this is because of the ambitious afforestation programs that the country has set up. And so it started in 2013 rather, to 2017, but we still see that the country is very much focused on afforestation. And as such, I read that in China, China has the biggest plantation in the world, and it's around 80 million hectares. So just because of this ambitious afforestation programs. And then when you come to broader forest sector employment, furniture and wooden floor industries are the largest employers in the sector. So in 2015, these sectors created 0.5 million jobs. And now to the green jobs in the sector, we realize that the afforestation programs will most likely offset losses in logging. So the high number of jobs that are being created here will certainly, you know, offset the losses that we see in the logging sector. And then also in China, the forest tourism related jobs are expanding. So there were 176.2 thousand jobs created in 2017, and it keeps growing. So when we come to additional trends in forest-related employment, so there are still some accidents being reported in the sector, and especially in logging and transport and silviculture and forest management. But the other fields are safe. But then safe as in they have fewer accidents compared to these two. And then in China, another trend that we observed is that the wages for forest workers is lower than the national average wage, so 28.7% lower. So for example, a normal, like somebody who works in a different sector, for example, maybe manufacturing or any other sector aside from forestry, might be earning $950 a month. But somebody working in the forest sector earns around $650 a month. So you see the huge difference. And then when it comes to forest-related tertiary education, there was a tenfold increase in number of graduates from technician up to doctorate level, from 13.7 thousand in 1990 to 152.9 thousand in 2015. And then the next country is Finland. So in Finland, there are many small-scale enterprises that exist in forestry and logging, around 9,000 of them. And then also in Finland, we had a declining number of workers in forestry and logging. And this happened mostly in the 80s, and it was due to mechanization in the industry. But after mechanization was after mechanization, now the numbers stabilized in the last decade, but it has not been able to increase as such. So it decreased and then stabilized. And then logging employees are over 50% of the workers in forest sector. And then in the broader forest sector employment, we have the pulp and paper industry, which was really affected between 2008 and 2018 by technological solutions, declining paper demand, and digitalization. So people started using electronic media compared to paper media, and this affected the industry a lot. And then another trend that was we identified in the broader forest sector was the growing demand in the use of innovative wood-based products. So we have new materials that are being used. For example, in packaging, we also have wood-based textile fibers, we have biofuels, we have bioethanol, and we also have materials that are used in the construction industry. And then when it comes to green jobs in the forest sector, so in Finland, bioeconomy plays a very big role in the country, and the forest sector is the biggest contributor to the bioeconomy. So the sector provided 39% of output and 20% employment opportunities in 2018. And then nature tourism and recreation services employed more than 30% of people in Finland. And then when it comes to additional trends in forest-related employment, in Finland, we realized that the short-term foreign workers from other European countries play a very vital role in the sector. So these short-term foreign workers, they usually serve as in tree plantation and also act as tree nursery workers and forest machine drivers. So these workers are very important, that even during this COVID pandemic, so the country had to find a way of ensuring that they could travel to Finland so that they can perform these tasks. And then another additional trend that we noticed is that there's increased productivity through mechanization and digitalization, and this has led to decreased employment opportunities. And then when it comes to trends in forest-related tertiary education, the number of graduates from technician certificate up to doctorate level has been falling since 2000. And this was after a strong rise from the 90s. And then the other country that we studied was Germany. And yeah, Germany has similar trends to Finland. So the numbers of workers working in forestry and logging has been decreasing. And then we see that pulp and paper and timber trade has seen a decline in the number of people working there. So it reduced from 800,000 in 2000 up to 600,000 in 2017. But as much as there's a decline, there was a slight growth in the wooden building sector. So the numbers increased slightly from 238.4 thousand people in 2017. At least there were over 200,000 people employed here in 2017. And then nature education, recreation, wooden building are gaining importance in Germany. So for example, we currently have more than 1.5 thousand forest kindergartens in Germany that are combining childcare with nature education. So this is really gaining importance, and it might continue for some time. And then there's a reduction in the core workforce in the state forest enterprises. So this is as a result of the use of contractors. So most of these activities have been outsourced to contractors and are no longer performed by the state forest enterprises. And then another trend that we observed in Germany is that there's the issue of aging workforce. So most of the people working in the forest sector are old people who are close to their retirement age. And then another trend that we also found out in Germany is the presence of short-term foreign workers from other European countries. So this is the same as in Finland. And these workers, they mostly work in motor manual timber harvesting operations. But when it comes to forest-related tertiary education, there was a steady increase in the number of forestry sciences and forestry engineering graduates. So the number increased from 3.7 thousand in 2001 up to 6.5 thousand in 2018. So it's like it doubled. And then in Indonesia, we had a decreasing number of forestry workers in employment in forestry and logging, just like the other countries. And in Indonesia, we saw that the workers in wood, sawmilling, rattan, bamboo, paper and paper products, and wood and furniture industries increased. So from 2013 to 2017, there was a slight increase. And then when it comes to green jobs in the forest sector, there are no explicit initiatives as such, but it's included in the national medium term as well as national long-term development plans. So we'll see how they're going to implement it. And then informal employment is very common, especially in forestry and logging. So most of the family members, they help out other family members with the tasks involved. And then we also found out that there are some jobs that require professional certification by the Indonesian national bodies. So this was introduced by the government around 2014. And yeah, so not all professions are being certified, but at least some are being certified. And then we have trends in forest-related tertiary education. So the number increased. So you see in 1990, there were 2.3 thousand graduates, but in 2015, there were 9.9 thousand graduates. And then we have South Africa. So in South Africa, in employment and logging, there were 87,000 people employed in 2018. But there was another 30,000 people working for contractors. So this shows how contractors are playing an important role in forestry and logging sector in South Africa. And then the broader forest sector, we have sawmilling that was the biggest employer in the country with over 70,000 jobs. And then in South Africa, we also identified the increased demand for new timber products. So there's the demand for nanocellulose, there's demand for bioenergy, and there's also, so this demand for new products have created jobs in research and development, innovation, science, and engineering. And then when it comes to green jobs in the forest sector, so the green economy is one of the priority sectors in the country's new growth path. And in the next decade, they expect that green jobs, like this green economy, will create over 300,000 jobs. And these jobs are expected to be from clean manufacturing and environmental services. But there are no explicit examples in forestry though. So this is in the environmental sector as a whole. And then when it comes to additional trends in forest-related employment, mechanization adopted by companies has really enhanced cost effectiveness and sustainability, especially in harvesting, transport, and silviculture operations in the country. But as much as it's advantageous to have mechanization, there are also jobs that have been lost in the process. And then in South Africa, there's also training of contracting staff. And this is done mostly to promote economic performance of timber growers. So these staff are usually trained on fire protection, silviculture and health, and safety issues. And then when it comes to forest-related tertiary education, there's an increasing number of graduates from universities. So in 2005, we see that there were 200 students around. And then in 2019, we had almost 400 students. And another trend that was observed in South Africa is that there's a decreasing number of students in forestry colleges. So at least there were 35 students in Fort Cox Agriculture and Forestry Training Institute in 2009 rather, but the number decreased to 10 students in 2019. And then the other country that we also focused on was United States of America. So in the US as well, just like the other 6 countries that we've talked about, there was a decrease in the total number of workers in forestry and logging. So the numbers decreased from around 60,000 in 2000 and up to, and then compared to 2010. And this was mostly due to Great Recession and economic crisis between 2008 and 2009. And then when it comes to the broader forest sector employment, we see that wood product manufacturing had the highest number of jobs in 2017. But there was a decline in wood products, in the other wood product manufacturing and newsprint mills. So this is same case to Finland. So the use of electronic media has really affected newsprint mills in the US as well. And then when it comes to green jobs in the forest sector, so we see that in the environment sector as a whole, public employment made up 26% of all employment in green goods and services in 2011. And then private employment constituted of over 74% of these jobs. And so out of these jobs, especially in the private employment, so about 10% of those jobs were in the forest sector. So still a small percentage. And then additional trends in forest-related employment in the US is that by 2028, at least in the US, they expect that there will be a shift to wholesale trade and professional scientific and technological services related to the sector. So people will shift from forestry and logging and wood manufacturing to these other activities. And then another trend that we also identified is that there are new fields of employment that are emerging in the US. So forest recreation, forest biomaterials and bioenergy, human health, risk management and compliance. So if you can remember what I've said in the previous countries is that this is the same as well as it's the same in Indonesia, it's the same in China. So there's an increasing demand by the society for recreation services from the forest. There's increased demand for renewable energy from the forest. There's increased demand for new products from the forest. So this is a trend that cuts across all these countries that we studied. And then when it comes to enrollment in undergraduate programs in the US, so the numbers have been increasing. So if you compare from 2005 to 2017, there was an increase of 12.1%, but it declined for master's and doctorate programs. And another interesting thing is that as much as the enrollment is increasing in undergraduate programs, there is a decline in forestry programs. So if you compare natural resource management and conservation programs, you find so many students there. But when you go to forestry programs, there are very few students there. So, and this is almost, the decline is like more than a half. So the number of students you find in forestry programs now is half of what you could see in the 60s in the US. So it's really a major drop. And now we go to the last section, and it's the conclusion. So what did we learn from this study? So from this study, we realized that employment in forestry and logging has been declining. And this has been as a result of productivity gains, and most especially from mechanization and IT, as well as outsourcing of forest work to contractors, especially in Finland, Germany, and South Africa, and also restructuring of the sector, and also the logging bans, like the one we saw in China. And in some countries, we see that there's an attempt to, make up for the decline in the number of people working in forestry and logging, and also to deal with the issue of aging workforce. So we have migrant workers who are reported in Finland and Germany. So this means that the forest sector cannot meet its workforce with the local people. So they have to import other people from neighboring countries. And another thing we observed is that countries are addressing the issue of job quality in forestry, but they are not yet there. So they're making efforts here and there, but we still see that the number of accidents is still high, but lower compared to previous times. And we also see that wages is also an issue. For example, in China, so I shared with you how much somebody working in the forest sector earns compared to the national average wages. And in many countries, we saw that there's evidence that green jobs can contribute to the creation of new employment opportunities in forestry. So, but how many people will be employed, we don't know yet. So we are just working with estimations, yeah, it could be, it could not be, but yeah, we need to, at least, there's more research needed here. And then another thing is that we see that the number of graduates from forest-related higher education has risen in all the countries apart from Finland and the US. And as such, I felt like it would be nice if I could share some gaps in knowledge for further research, so that we can start thinking about what to do next. And the first recommendation is that they still need to investigate gender and the outlook for a higher promotion of women in forestry and related sectors. So we need to find out how women are doing when it comes to jobs in this sector, and what are they mostly involved in, and which positions do they hold. And then we also need to investigate the impact of an aging workforce. So we see that in some countries, the number of old people working in the sector is very high. So what will happen if all these people retire at the same time? And what will be the impact on employment in the sector? And then we also need to further investigate the quality of forestry jobs, including those ones for self-employed people, as well as green jobs. And lastly, we also need to focus on recruitment problems at graduate level. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Juliet, for this nice presentation. Well, we can open for questions now. You can turn on your camera and raise your hand, physical or virtual, or you can also use the chat function if you prefer. Do we have questions to Juliet? Yes, Janetta.
Thank you for your presentation, a very interesting topic. I was just wondering how big this employment in forestry in general is compared to the rest of the economy, because you only used absolute numbers, but how big it is as a share of the total employment in the economy, if you have such information. Is it something, you know, really important? I mean, you mentioned in case of Brazil that it's really important for the whole economy, but how does it look like for other countries in general? And then my second question would be regarding these green jobs, because I got the impression from your presentation that it's very much future oriented at the moment. In a sense, these jobs might only realize in the future. Do you know what is the status at the moment? How or what share of jobs in forestry sector in those countries could be already considered as green jobs, and also maybe not only green jobs, but simply decent or good quality jobs?
Thank you, Janetta. Juliet?
Okay, yeah, so thank you so much for the two questions. So the countries that we selected for this particular study are countries where forest sector employment plays a big role. So it's not only employment, but also the forest sector. So our first criteria was countries where they have a large forest cover, and then the forest sector contributes significantly to the GDP, and also in terms of number of jobs in the sector. So these countries that were selected, 7, are very important key forestry countries. So here, employment in the sector is very important in these 7 countries that we were focusing on. And they're important, but the problem was to get the numbers. So there's a lot of informal work in the sector. There's a lot of part-time work. There's a lot of short-term contracts that people have here. So the numbers that we usually get most of the time, and it's also not so easy to get, so is mostly on full-time equivalent jobs, so formal jobs. And then another thing is that the numbers usually are on forestry and logging, not the broader sector as such. So we don't, most of the time we don't have numbers on people working in nature conservation or in urban forestry. So these numbers are usually not so easy to come across. So most of the time, the numbers are from forestry and logging, and the sector is broad. It's more than forestry and logging. So what we are portraying is just a part of, a piece of a bigger cake. Yeah. And then the other thing about green jobs, yes, green jobs is, futuristic in many countries. And even in these countries that we studied, they're talking about the future. So all these jobs, when they are implemented, they will create 300,000 jobs. We don't even know. Maybe there could be more, there could be less. We don't know. But at least for the US, in 2010 and 2011, there was a study by the US Bureau of Labor Statistics. So they did a study on green jobs in the US, not only in the forest sector, in the US. And they provided numbers. And for example, they said in the private sector, 76% of the jobs were found in the private sector. But out of this 76%, only 10% were in the forest sector. So this is the only concrete example that we have. But in the other countries, we don't have explicit examples up to now.
Thank you, Juliette. Well, we have first a question here in the, unless Juliette, you want to do a follow-up directly linked to what you asked? No? Okay. Then, well, Alma asked here a question in the chat. She says, what about illegal workers, loggers in, for example, Brazil? Were they covered in the statistics? So can you say something, Juliette, about illegal workers and loggers, I guess, especially in the developing countries, although not exclusively?
Yeah, I think I mentioned something about informal employment. So for example, in Indonesia, we have so much informal employment where family members help each other. So it's not only illegal, but also informal. So that is not recorded. So most of the times, yes, these numbers are usually not recorded. So I'm sure even for Brazil, these numbers were not recorded because this is the official statistics. So they don't record such kind of things.
Okay. I have a question because you talked mostly about more macro figures, right, about the forestry sector. But if we were to zoom in a little bit more, especially in developing countries, how do you see all of these transformations in the forestry sector in terms of their potential to help local populations to create, socioeconomic development? Especially in Indonesia and Brazil, there are so many communities that really depend that most of their livelihoods come from income, right, from the forests. So if we zoom in these countries, how do you see all of these transformations and their potential for local populations?
Maybe before I answer your question, there is an expert from Brazil, Rodrigo Hakamada. So I don't know if he wants to say something about the question that was asked on illegal logging in Brazil. If he wishes. If he doesn't, it's fine.
Hey, Juliette.
Hey.
Yeah, I just a short comment that in Brazil, there are two clear groups of employees. The group of the forest sector from big companies and forest plantation, which is a big one. Nowadays, about 90% of all wood extracted in Brazil comes from plantation, not from native forest. And there is this other 10%, this group that is more concentrated in Amazon forest, that is like very small communities. And this one, it's difficult even to see them in these numbers that you presented, Juliet. So answering George's question, I think it would be difficult to capture the effect of this whole forest sector for this part of the society. I don't know if I was clear enough. but for me, it's like these two groups, right?
Okay, so thank you so much, Rodrigo, and sorry for ambushing you. I really appreciate. Yes, so thank you, Jorge, for your question. Yes, when we now take it closer, we realize that, for example, the class on non-wood forest products plays a very important role in most rural economies. So most of the people get their livelihoods from there, from collecting these materials, wild growing materials in the forests. And that is where, you know, they get their food, they get a few coins when they sell these products. But the thing is, this industry is very localized. I mean, they just do it, you know, at community level. So if I collect so many mushrooms, I just take it to the market and then I sell to my neighbors or village mates, and that's it. So it's difficult to capture these numbers because it's usually done at a small scale level. We know they play an important role, but it's mostly at small scale, local level. So people collect these items, especially for subsistent consumption, and then when they have additional is when they sell them. So it's not easy to capture these numbers because you know how many things are sold in the local market. Who goes there to record and measure and do all this kind of things? You know, it doesn't happen when it's at such a scale. So I think it's important that at least more effort is directed towards this, so the situation is improved. You know, the products can get value addition, for example, you know, and then they can be made into something that can be consumed even beyond the village or beyond the locality, for example. And then as such, people will be able to get additional income and also meaningful income. And you know, we can also see now how this can be better developed, or we can actually get the trend of how this is going on. But until then, we just know it's important, but we don't know, we don't have numbers.
Okay, thank you. And I think Araceli has a question.
Yeah, thank you so much. I cannot see the button of raising hand. I don't know why. But anyway, I was wondering about creating new forestry jobs, which is, I think, one of the most important conclusions of your study. So it's really good to know. But this is new workers replacing those, for example, without technology, digital skills, for instance. So we have replacing effect, or on the contrary, or maybe in parallel, are there any efforts of the countries that you presented to reconvert or trying to retrain current workers? That is my question. We can see the replacing effect or reconvert or retraining effect. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you for your question. Yes, when it comes to creation of new opportunities, I think most countries, I did not get that information though, but most countries, at least from what I know, is that they try to retrain their workers. So retraining to get new skills has been such an important topic of late, because we see that green jobs can take different forms. So we have new opportunities that are coming there. We also have opportunities that are now like jobs that are turning green. You know, they were there before, but now they are turning green. So as they, you know, try to align themselves towards sustainability and sustainable forest management principles, so they become green in the process. So these are two ways that, you know, these jobs, green jobs, can happen in the forest sector. So for the jobs that are becoming green as a result of, you know, changing your practices and technologies, the companies or countries are training their people on like retraining them. And then for the new opportunities that are coming up, so we have new people that will of course take up those jobs, but it's up to the education system to train now new students, you know. So at the university level, it's up to them to try to equip the students with these skills and competencies needed for the new opportunities.
Thanks, Juliet. We had a minor problem with the audio during the answer, but I think we could answer. We could hear the we could hear your answer. Yeah, Celie confirms that it's okay.
Yes, thank you.
Well, okay, so I think we're running out of time. So thank you very much, Juliet, for your presentation. It was very interesting. Thank you, everyone, for participating. And we'll see you next week in the next ZEF colloquium. So have a good afternoon, everyone.
Thank you so much. Bye.